This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. Let's now talk about funding, critical aid to development, and what we see. So, this program that we discussed last week, the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund, and the kind of work that it was doing around the country, well, that it's been doing around the country, looking at how to fund innovations in the country, looking at how to help to grow initiatives that are actually making a difference. So just to remind you what Ronnie Osumba told us, that they launched a business innovation challenge to competitively select up to 5 initiatives, and the winners are to receive a grant funding and technical assistance of up to £100,000 each. The fund targeted initiatives that are post proof of concept, innovative, scalable, sustainable, and that have demonstrated substantial impact. And those that entered the business innovation challenge were many, according to what we heard, and they went through a rigorous process of vetting, and then the winners were announced through a show that was aired on KTN Home. Mm-hmm. This fund is supported by the UK government, and let's now speak to the Deputy High Commissioner in the British High Commission in Kenya. This is Julius. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and great to be with you today.
Welcome to the Situation Room. If you were here, we'd have told you welcome to the hot seat, but we hope that it's warm enough wherever you are. Asante sana, just to take us back to what we were talking about, the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund and the reason why the UK government decided to support this particular initiative. Just tell us about that.
So the UK has a very modern partnership with Kenya, very deep, strong business links. And we have a history of supporting innovation here. We were one of the supporters of M-Pesa very, very early on, 20 years ago. And what we wanted to do was to take that to a new level. And why this is so important is because employment and job creation is probably the top challenge facing the country. Many people are saying that. So about 1 million young Kenyans enter the workforce each year, and perhaps 15%, something like that, get a formal job. That's become even tougher during this economic challenge with COVID. So the idea here is, as Ronnie was talking to you, the idea is very simple. This is about tapping the energy and the entrepreneurship of Kenyans, particularly youth, really to catalyze their businesses, to develop new business models, to try new technologies. And the key thing is that it's about job creation. And we really want to give Kenyans the opportunity and choices to go forward. So through the Jobs Fund, we support firms that are showing that it's the small firms that are showing creation for a lot of job creation. So that's what it's about. It's about, as you said, it's about grants and mentoring, and really to help those firms try technologies, try new business approaches, and ultimately to create a lot of jobs.
Why has this interest been taken, if I may ask? Why are you looking at these sectors with such great interest?
It's because we look at the analysis like lots of others do, and we see all these young people coming onto the job market each year. And what's great about Kenya is there's this real aspiration culture. So for us, it's trying to tap all that spirit and that entrepreneurial culture, and to create the jobs so that all these people who are coming into the job market, they can make the most of themselves in their lives.
May I ask, why 4 years? It's supposed to be a 4-year program. Why not 3? Why not 6? Why not 10?
It's a very good question. So we've been supporting Kenya on innovation and entrepreneurship for 20 years. As I said, we worked with Safaricom way back on the M-Pesa program. So this is something that we've been doing for a long time. But the world changes. So each time we think of a program, we think about what's the right time frame for this one. And so we went for 4. You're right. It could have been 3. It could have been 5. But we thought that 4 was the appropriate time to test it, to push it, and if it works, to scale it, and also to adapt it as we find new conditions.
I still don't actually understand. What is it about the 4 years? You get the funding, and every year you are refunded depending on your meeting targets that are set. So, what do you expect to see after 4 years?
So no, it's a terrific question. So what we're doing is we're providing rounds of financing for firms through this very competitive process. So, each round we have about 850 applicants, and we select 5. So at the end of this, what we want is, through the support that we're providing to those individual firms, we're expecting those firms to grow and create large numbers of jobs. And we choose sectors that are specifically job-creating sectors. So we want those firms to grow, and we want those jobs to be created. So that and so these are sort of from tens to hundreds to thousands of jobs. To me, the key thing actually is that this is about demonstration. So once these firms have tried new technologies, and we can talk about some of those, but as they're aggregating markets, as they're trying new business models, those are being seen frankly, through our partnership with KTN and Standard Group. Many more people are seeing those, and they're thinking, I can try that in my sector. So people from fruit are trying the same kinds of things that people have tried in milk to scale their business and to create the jobs. So that's the approach. After 4 years, we'll see jobs, we'll see firms growing, and we'll see this demonstration effect so that other people can pick up the ideas.
Coming off the back of what you just said, some of the businesses that would have been selected, is there a certain path that they follow? I mean, a lot of buzzwords jump out at us, like sustainability, sustainable business,
social enterprise.
Exactly, social enterprise. So is this the direction that the funding then would take when you're looking at some of these businesses?
So that's exactly right. It's, as you know, Kenya is incredibly diverse. So what we wanted to do was to capture a couple of things. We wanted to identify firms where they were early in their cycle, but they had essentially a performance record. But they had a new idea that they wanted to test, and that wouldn't be doable under normal circumstances. Mm-hmm. So they come to us and they say, we really want to try this new idea, this new business model. We think it'll create a load of jobs. So that's one set. And then the other set is really about trying something, really quite new, very early stage, very innovative, and where there isn't quite that record. And we try and have a balance. We try and have a portfolio of some of those slightly more advanced firms and some of these really, really new startups.
How about the ones that you think have done very well, but maybe they just, for one reason or the other, because you had to pick 5, the number 6 company, for instance, it was a very good idea. It still requires that support. What kind of help can you get them in getting that support that they need? Because by the time you've narrowed them down from 800 applications, and somebody has come to the top 10, but they just did not get to be among the top 5 that win this money, but they still require the kind of support that you're offering. What do you do with those?
This is a great question because, as you say, it's really tough. It's really tough. 850 down to 10, down to 5, and this was the hardest thing that we found. Our team found in selecting the ideas, getting it down from 800 down to that top 10, and then the judges. And a public thank you to the judges. They had such a tough job of choosing the 10 to the 5, but what? So they get the profile through the program. The 10 are all highlighted. We don't support them in the intense way, but what we do is we encourage them, the ones who didn't quite make it into the top 5, but also all those other ones. All entrepreneurs know that you have to keep trying, you have to refine your idea, you have to innovate. And what was really exciting for this round is one of the winners was one of the ones that hadn't made it last time, but they had continued to develop their work, they continued to refine the idea, and they'd come back and pitched. And this time they'd come back into the top 5. So we support them and we give them profile so that they can continue, because it's very tough if you're number 6, out of a top 5, or you're number 11 out of a top 10. So we continue to encourage people to keep applying.
So, what would be of benefit to the aid programs themselves, as opposed to the individual companies who are or organizations who are getting this much needed critical funding, of what benefit is it to the UK government? Of what benefit is it to the organizations that are helping in this manner?
So this is a development program. So what we're very keen is to support investment, jobs, and growth here in Kenya. And to me, the key word is in the title of the program, the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund. It's the catalytic bit. So we can support 5 firms each round, and we can more widely support the others. But the key thing is that they're testing innovation. To me, that you don't just scale up the jobs in that particular firm, but you promote, you showcase what they're doing. So to give you one example, there's a terrific firm that we funded in the last round, Savannah Circuit. They're based in West Pokot. They're a real innovation firm, engineering, but they focus on the dairy sector at the moment. They 3D print some of their components. They have solar-powered coolers on the back of bodas that go around to farmers and they collect the milk. And what's amazing about that is that there's much more loss, the farmer gets much more income, and they've really built a much bigger market in that area of West Pokot. Now, the interesting thing about that is, so they're doing terrifically well, but that same approach could be applied to fish, it can be applied to vaccines. So you have these spillover effects that you can see. So now we're very early in that process, but that's the kind of example that we see of. It's not just a jobs fund for that firm, it's a catalytic jobs fund that has a much wider impact across the country.
What are the key factors that you looked into when you are vetting and determining who would actually benefit from this funding?
So some of the key criteria that we've advertised is it's got to be impactful, it's got to be innovative. We're very much looking at sustainability. When the judges look at this, these are such seasoned people. When you look at people like Darshan Chandaria and his whole team, they're such seasoned people. They look at the viability of the business as well. And for us, ultimately, it comes down: is this a viable proposition, and is it going to create a lot of jobs? Those were the main things we looked out for.
What about the composition of the ownership of that particular setup? What were you looking at?
So we're looking for young Kenyan entrepreneurs. We made a huge effort to promote this around the country. So as I was saying, in the last round we had successful bids from West Pokot. We had 10 Senses, a fantastic firm that's largely operational at the coast, looking at macadamia and cashew nuts. This time round, we have teams up in Turkana, fish processing. So we put a huge amount of effort into going across the country to encourage the bids, because again, as you guys know, that entrepreneurial spirit is across the country, and we wanted to make sure that we were going as wide as we could go to encourage those small firms to bid in. That's
very laudable, but what if, for instance, the founder was a non-Kenyan, and currently when you are vetting, the people who are running it were Kenyan, would they also qualify for consideration?
So they do, yep, they do. The key thing for us is that it's going to create jobs here in Kenya. So as you'll see from the winners, there are non-Kenyans there, but the majority of them are Kenyans, which you'd expect.
Why I ask the question is because I think what you're doing falls in the category of trying to assist startups. If I'm wrong, please correct me. Now,
that's correct. Yeah,
yes,
here in Kenya.
Yes, here in Kenya. But the history of startups in this country are not. The history isn't really positive in terms of the sort of funding that locals, as in Kenyans, indigenous Kenyans, get. Do you think that this is because the Kenyans themselves did not meet the threshold for innovation that is required internationally, or do you think that perhaps there was because a perceived element of bias as to who gets it? If I can give you the figures that have been touted since 2018, we are told that 90% of this, according to the financial analysts, 90% of the funding in East Africa have expatriate founders. Nothing wrong with that. 65% of Kenyan startup founders are American. Again, nothing wrong with that. But are we saying, therefore, that what you are trying to do is trying to actually bring out what may genuinely exist among Kenyans, that spirit of entrepreneurship that you've mentioned?
So I'm interested in the source of the numbers. They sound high to me. I mean, when you look around, many of the that might be in a particular sector, but when you look around, most of the startups that I see are Kenyan, and certainly most of the applicants we get are from Kenyan small businesses, and most of the winners are from Kenyan small businesses. So I think what we're trying to do here is to overcome exactly that financial challenge you're talking about. When you look at the constraints, so many companies are facing cash flow constraints, particularly now because of COVID. But even before, they were looking at sort of real pressures. It's probably the number one barrier to starting a business and growing your business is you can't get that. So what we are trying to do is to exactly support that early stage innovation, and to support Kenyan small firms to grow and to create jobs.
Actually, my source was the Standard newspaper on Tuesday, February the 11th, 2020.
But I would just go behind the numbers, and because 65% from America, that just sounds very high. So I would. It's certainly not the kinds of numbers we're seeing. When we look at our applicants, these are mostly Kenyan small firms who are applying, and mostly Kenyan small firms who are winning the competition.
Why do you think that's the issue? Because we look at businesses and the reasons why they've stagnated, whether these are startups, whether these are businesses that have been, in existence for 5-10 years, whatever the case may be. And the critical issue that they often slip over is funding. When we talk about support or aid that has come in, very rarely is it capacity building or training on soft skills or things like that. Really, the aid comes in form of funding. Why is it that aid, or rather that funding, is such a problem then when it comes to businesses, from your perspective?
So I think it's a terrific question, and frankly, it's one we're still grappling with. So in the Catalytic Jobs Fund, we're very clear that our offer to firms is about funding, but it's also about that technical support, and that's why we keep supporting these firms through, because many of them it's a funding problem, but many of them it's also about how do you grow your business? What kind of environmental regulations do you need to comply with? Whatever it might be, what's the best way to handle staffing issues? So there's a whole set of issues as you begin to grow as a business that you need to deal with. And that's exactly the kind of mentoring that we provide through this. And more widely is increasingly out there. So we have a sort of sister program that particularly looks at tech issues. And for that, it's almost all about mentoring and networking, and for colleagues sharing ideas. Because there's no one who can help you more than somebody who's grappling with the same problem, but has overcome it. So it's partly about mentoring, and it's partly about people really sharing their challenges and sharing their solutions together. So that's another thing we're doing, but more on the digital side. But I agree with the premise of your question, that a lot of this is also about mentoring as much as about finance.
So if you look at that, the kind of program that you're supporting, the KCJF and other organizations, other donor organizations that are also operating in the country, running various programs. So, for example, UNESCO has some programs that it's running and supporting the government. The government itself, under the Ministry of ICT, Youth and Innovation, is running some programs. The Youth Enterprise Development Fund is also running some programs in terms of just building the capacity of entrepreneurs in innovation and just managing businesses. Don't you feel like there's too many organizations doing too many different things in the same sphere instead of coming together to find a way of commonality?
So I think so many people are involved because they see the analysis that you and I see, which is around the scale of the challenge and getting jobs for this, the million young people who come onto the workforce each year. So I think that's why there's so much interest in this kind of support. I totally agree with you that this could probably be coordinated better, and I think that that's something that we all need to look at. What I would say is that I think people are beginning to do that much more. And when you're not quite sure what works best, then you try a whole load of different things. And as things work, then you scale those and you bring all those together. And the ones that haven't worked, you say, okay, we tried it, it didn't quite work, and we'll do something different. So you're right. The National Treasury is doing this, the Ministry of ICT. We work very closely with CS Betty Minor in the Ministry of Industry and Trade. So there's a whole set that people are trying to coordinate across this. And one of our support to government with CS Minor is exactly about bringing. It's actually called the Situation Room as well, but it's bringing businesses together so that they can talk directly, collectively to the ministry.
But the other issue is, I think Ndu had even alluded to that. What's in it for the UK government, for instance? When you come and you're offering this kind of money to support, and you're not even asking for a stake in the businesses that win, it's just offering money and supporting the organizations. Somebody would always ask, there's nothing like a free lunch. Are we to trust that the UK is basically just funding these organizations with no other intention?
So this is an aid program, and on this one, there's not some UK national interest behind it. We are as we have been for a long time, we're a very strategic partnership for Kenya. We have a deep relationship on the economic side. So our only interest is that Kenya succeeds, and we think that one of the it's been growing so fast over recent years. Poverty's been coming down. That's our interest in this. Is that Kenya continues to grow and expand, and this is what modern partnership's about.
What would it take to have a mushrooming of what you've done? Because they often said, in development fields, that's just it, that development begets development, especially when you're looking now at funding that can be made available for certain, businesses, sustainable in that. So now when you look at sustainability, it would mean that maybe you're looking at a place whereby these homegrown businesses that are now being given this much needed injection, that they also, or at least an atmosphere, can then be grown in Kenya, whereby you then have funding then being created for other organizations as a homegrown solution as well. Do you see it getting to that point, or is it a reality that could come about whereby this aid that's being offered is something of a homegrown solution in Kenya as well?
So I think it's a really good point. So on the first part of that, to me, these firms are terrific. They're really innovative. They're really exciting, and we strongly support them, and we hope that they will create lots of jobs. But to me, the really exciting bit is when, as you put it, they mushroom, and the idea that is something is happening in fish, that idea is taken into dairy, or that idea is taken into fruit, and it's this. To me, it's when you get these platforms, or when you get the ideas, the business model ideas that have worked in one sector taken to another. That's really, to me, what the most exciting part of this program is. I think on the second part, and I think this is coming back a little bit to some of your previous questions, but what we were talking to the judges about was exactly that point. How do we get more Kenyan funding into this sector? Because if you're a firm that's proved its concept, it's got good performance, you can usually get the funding, if the idea is good enough and the firm is strong enough. The challenge is that much earlier stage of the process where frankly it's risky. People are saying, I'm not sure about this firm, I'm not sure about this idea, but how do you get the funding into the best types of ideas earlier so that they can really fly? That I think is something where we're still having a conversation with the judges about how we get that private sector Kenyan funding into earlier stages.
From where you sit, what is it that would make that also become a growing industry where you have more angel investors or just investors who are looking at ideas and saying, this is a brilliant idea. 800 people had applied just for this particular funding. That tells you that there is real appetite for funding, and there are people who are coming up with innovations across the country. What would it take to get those ideas supported from idea stage to the proven concept stage up to scaling and all those other stages?
So for us, we're looking at what we can do as the government, but as the UK government. But I think it's a real challenge, and this is what the conversation we're having with the judges, because they know this sector better. Their view was very much along the lines you've outlined, is to try and get these ideas into angel investors earlier, and to somehow have it, whereas they're willing to make investments later on in a firm's cycle, how do we get them to invest more in those earlier stages? I don't know what the answer is, but it's a very, very live question, and it's one that we're actively discussing with the judges.
What's the situation like in the UK? Do you have a similar situation in the UK? Are there some lessons that we can borrow from what happens in the UK?
I think there's always lessons to be gained from the UK, from the US, from other countries that have gone through this, including in East Asia. So that you need to make sure that those lessons are applied. But there's a lot of set of policy issues where you have you need to have a wider policy environment that's conducive. You often in the UK there are these much more risk-taking domestic ways of funding firms in the earlier stage. So there's a set of things there that we'll certainly look at, whether it's from the UK or other countries, about how you support those early innovations or those early stage firms.
And also just thinking about now what the program that the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund has been running, going around the country, creating awareness about the existence of this fund, encouraging those with ideas and innovations to come forth. I think there's also a gap in terms of awareness. If more and more of such organizations were given the prominence, then it could also spark a conversation across the country, do you think?
So I agree. I mean, we've been overwhelmed by the interest in this fund, and when you're up in Turkana, you're talking to people there. We're getting applications, all down through the country. So I agree, and it's one of the exciting things I find with this partnership. We're working closely with KTN, we're working with the Standard Group. I think that's terrific. Through programs like yours, we get these ideas out there, not just for the Catalytic Jobs Fund, but more generally about the kinds of ideas that are really innovative, the kind of ideas that will create jobs, some of these specific business model approaches that can really help scale up. Because you often find here you have a lot of small-scale producers, but what the challenge is to getting them together so that they're aggregating, so that the market is bigger, they're losing less in waste, et cetera, et cetera. So if you can do more and more of that, having a much wider conversation in different parts of the country, in different sectors, I think that's exactly what the way forward is.
There are people who are listening to this and may have been in a position whereby you talked about COVID, and even before that may have lost their jobs or were not able to pick up on a particular business idea that they had, and are thinking to themselves, what is it that I must do, or what kind of idea is it that I must have that would attract this kind of funding, this kind of aid, this kind of development assistance. And they're really at a point where they're asking, what is it that I must do? In what direction is it that I must be going to be able to get this kind of help? What would you say to that?
So I would say a few things. So I think, firstly, we're looking at how we adapt our programs specifically for if there's a kind of COVID innovation response that can help. So even in the crisis, you look for, whether it's masks or other kinds of PPE, you're looking for ways that can be done locally. So that's to always look for that opportunity. The other thing is to really is to hold your nerve. So we're not adapting our whole program because we know that we're bouncing back. We're beginning to bounce back, and having firms being ready for that is something that's really, really important. You don't want to tilt everything towards COVID. And then the third thing is to look out for the people in their sector, the people in their area who are innovative, and to try and learn from them and to try and see what opportunities are available. So you've highlighted there are programs out there, in addition to ours, where people are funding firms. That's exactly the place to look to see what opportunities are available.
Does the programs extend its support to, let's say, networking, where all these innovators have a network where they communicate, they found some sense of collaboration? And then, on the other hand, things like benchmarking trips, where one can move from one part of the country to go to another, where, let's say, there's a solution that's being used on fish on one end of the country, like you said, and could be used on a dairy. So supporting those kind of collaborative networks to thrive?
So I think that's a terrific idea. We haven't done it with this specific fund as much as you imply. We've certainly done it with our digital program, the UK Kenya Tech Hub, because that's exactly what it's about. In those early stages, it's about the conversations, it's about the networking, it's about working through, it's about we provide business support. So I personally think you've got a point there that there could be more networking, not just in a sense showcasing, but actually networking and working through ideas for some of the firms who may have not made it into the top 5 each round, but who are very close and who could really learn. And also between the firms so they can compare ideas. Because a lot of these ideas are about building markets, about building a platform that aggregates these often these small producers so that you can find different ways that more of their product makes it to the market.
And then the other support maybe would be in terms of accessing markets. So, for instance, Ronnie Osumba was telling us about this company that's been working in Murang'a County on mangoes, and now they're coming up with products, and the better part of their market now is the export market. Would the High Commission, or through this program, be helping such organizations also access markets or even find markets in the UK?
So I think this is one of the really exciting options, and I think Ronnie was talking about Mionga Fresh, and they're already accessing the German market, and one of our previous winners, 10 Centers, they work on cashews and macadamia, and they're doing the same, accessing export markets. So I think there's a real point here about how you help these small firms where they can pool, where they can geolocate, because that's increasingly important for an export market. You want to know where the product has come from. If it's grown in an environmentally friendly way, if the quality is there, then these are exactly the things that you need that a platform provides that you can then export. And once you're doing that, then exactly like you say, the market is much bigger.
So what happens after the money? For these organizations who've clearly gotten a boost in the arm for their businesses, what happens after that? They receive this money, and what aid or what help is given? Because, I mean, it's great, but then in terms of management and in terms of looking through to make sure that they remain on said sustainable path is a whole other journey.
So that's exactly right. And what we do is we have terrific people like Ronnie and his team who actually help them continue. So they need to use the money wisely. They need to work out some of the other business issues. Life is never quite as you predict it, so you're always coming across challenges, and the team is there to help them work through. So that continues. And what we find actually is many of our partner firms, they find that support, that mentoring, that profile that they get, they find that as important once they've received the money and invested that in creating the jobs. And then if they cross that sort of stage, then they can come back to us for a bit more if they want to do something else to take the firm forward even further, to create even more jobs. So it's an ongoing relationship about how we're trying to help these firms really scale up.
We are speaking with Julius Court, the Deputy High Commissioner at the UK High Commission in Nairobi, looking at the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund and what this kind of support is doing in terms of funding local innovation and businesses. Good morning. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
What I'm hearing is actually very laudable. And sometimes for this to be something, not a one-off, but more of a continuum, there needs to be an incubator, a hub. Now, I'm changing direction a little bit. There has been talk of a UK-Kenya tech hub as part of the Prosperity Fund. Could you tell us a little bit about it and where it has gone to, what it's intended to achieve?
Yeah, thank you. So this is an idea that we do in a number of countries here, South Africa in particular, and it's really about bringing the ideas from the UK side, where we because the UK has a quite an entrepreneurial tech sector, but it's really about getting Kenyan firms, Kenyan startups, particularly on the digital side, but it's broader than that. And it's about them networking, and it's about providing some of the kind of the most basic opportunities and most basic information that firms can thrive. Because if there's one thing that we know in development is if you can leapfrog stages, and Kenya has such capability and such spirit to do that. If you can kind of leapfrog into the digital age much faster, and we're seeing that. Then you can really progress fast. So that's the basic premise behind it. It's very, very early in its development, and it's really about networking, mentoring, capacity building in the tech space.
Thank you.
How many of these hubs do we have? So the UK government is supporting this one. Then we have the other locally supported hubs, for example, iHub and the rest. Are you also working with these local hubs?
So we work very closely with the local hubs, and Ronnie and his team make sure that we stay as joined up, and it's terrific. I mean, there's hubs. I visited the ones in Kisumu, the Lake Hub. I visited the one in Mombasa, Swahili Pot Hub. These are terrific. I mean, physical places as well as virtual networks, where really some of the most innovative tech, digital folk gather and learn from each other and work with each other. So yeah, we're absolutely focusing on some of these local networks.
Which is the other thing, that when you talk about hubs and these innovation hubs, we're mostly thinking tech, where people are coming up with the software or programs that can help make business easier. How about just any other hubs? For example, maybe there are people who want to come up with art and they need an art gallery, so maybe an artist hub or such other hubs. Have you thought of supporting such?
So we don't support. So we have to be quite selective about what we support, and the funding is limited. But so we haven't, at least as the UK government, through the aid program, supported art hubs so directly. I think there are others out there who do. But what we have to make a calculation is where can we get the most return for the small investments we make. And we think this is one area where we can do it. And I think what's exciting to me is that it's not. So when you talk about digital, it's in a sense the platform. But actually, most of our grantees, they're in the agricultural sector because that's where most of the workforce is. We're also looking at manufacturing. We're also looking at other sort of digital service ideas. So, in a sense, the tech is the enabler, but you have specific sectors where things really fly, and that's what we're trying to get to.
All right. So, I mean, now just looking at how this has developed and looking into the future, is there, I mean, just as you spoke about limited funding, is there hope for more? Because and how long do you hope to keep this program running? Even as we come to the end of this conversation, how long do you hope to keep this running? There are those who may have tried to take a stab at it this year and were not able to come through. Is there hope for such coming?
So absolutely, there will be for this program. There will be additional rounds, and I would encourage everybody who applied this time and who didn't quite make it to really go for it next time, because you learn so much from the first time. You see the kinds of people who got through. So I think certainly keep going from that and learn from those that did. I think more broadly, this is a multi-year program, so we want to keep going. And what we've found through all our work is that if things work, then they tend to keep going and get scaled. So in that sense, you can never make promises about the future, but certainly where things are really working well, where we're really generating jobs, firms are growing, the ideas are spreading, then those are the kinds of things where more and more people want to support, and that's where it gets really exciting. So I'm excited about it. I think we see so much sort of demand for this kind of project, and we see so much impact that they're having, even in these early stages, and so much interest that I'm very excited for it.
I think it's a very good program, and we want to congratulate you and thank you very much for supporting such programs. Those obviously that receive the kind of money that they receive, 14 million shillings to boost your business, that is a substantial amount that you wouldn't just be able to come across any other way. So the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund and the support by the UK government through the British High Commission in Nairobi, very good job, and we thank you very much, Julius Court and your team.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed the conversation. And if colleagues want more information, it's kenyacatalyticjobsfund.org. Thank you again. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
We
Thank you
hope
very
to have
much.
you in the studio when we deal with this COVID-19.
Asante sana.
All right, have a good one. Very good program here that, just like you said, when you listen to the kind of opportunities that are there in this country. So this is just one by the UK government through the High Commission in Nairobi. There are others by the government itself. There are others by other organizations and other donor agencies. It's encouraging. Only thing is that people need to know about them. People need to know about them so they can participate. And like you were saying, you participate once, you're among the 800 applicants, you then maybe get shortlisted to the 100, you learn something, and you're able then to know how to tweak your pitch, how
application
to improve,
the next time.
how to improve your application for the next time. It's something to keep going and keep going.
Sure. And I think as we look at, just sustainability and look at sectors that have been touted to save the economies of many countries on the continent, and to see that such is going towards, a lot of just, those who came through to seek for this funding are in the agricultural sector and are trying to now use modern best practices for sustainability, and to see that money can be put to this, it would be something that would essentially save communities. It would save.
But what stands out is the local participation in such endeavors.
Yep.
We hear of Safaricom Foundation, we hear of Equity Foundation, I'm sure other banks have
KCB as well.
foundation. We have these foundations, and I'm sure they contribute significantly, but they could do a great deal more. This really is what we're saying, because if you look at the huge profits that some of these institutions post, profits that are made here, okay, the giving back to the community thought process and thinking and ethos.
I think actually what we need is more and more success stories being told. For instance, the 5 companies that have won this year from the Kenya Catalytic Jobs Fund, their story and where they started, where they are looking, following their progress over the years, what they've been doing, and then going into very many others, the ones that had won last year, the previous beneficiaries, and where they are at now, the impact that they've had in the community and the economy. Those are very important stories to tell.